The gutters ran red that summer, but not with blood, not yet. It was sewage, mostly. Thick, glistening, foul, baking beneath a sun, too proud to hide. You kneel at the edge, gagging behind a rag, a pail in one hand, a wooden scoop in the other. This is your living. Your fingers blister, not from sword or spindle, but from scraping human waste from the stones of a city that no longer knows mercy. Above you, the banners of liberty ripple, blue, white, and red. But below, the air is acrid with rot. You ask yourself, is this freedom, or just a new kind of filth? The year is 1793, and survival has its own revolution. If this story stains your memory or stirs your heart, tell me, could you have endured the work of the forgotten and the damned? Subscribe, share your thoughts, and join me in walking through history's most sleepless shadows. The streets of Paris do not sleep, they smoulder. Before the sun spills over the chimneys and spires, before the market bells ring, or a cock dares crow, the Rue Mouffetard breathes out its nightly secret, a stench thick as wool, curling through the cracks of wooden doors and rising like incense from the city's sewers. You wake not by light, but by the rot of it. Your nose recoils, your eyes sting, and in that first sluggish moment of consciousness, you remember who you are and why your nights are never dark enough. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. The words flutter proudly on the lips of revolution, but up here, in your cramped garret beneath the slant of a leaking roof, they are just syllables, shouted by men whose boots you have scrubbed clean of excrement. You rise from your straw-stuffed pallet, your bones reluctant, your back already aching. Beneath your feet, the floorboards creak, not in protest, but in resignation. You wet a rag from a basin murky with yesterday's rinse water. The rag goes to your face first, then to your bucket and tools. A wooden scoop, a rusted iron hook, and a pail you've patched with wax and cloth. Your fingers fumble from cold. You pull on your coat, more whole than fabric, stiff with salt from the sweat of too many mornings. And then, without ceremony, you descend. The stairs are steep and crooked, worn smooth by decades of desperate feet. You pass doors closed tight against the world. Behind one, a crying infant. Behind another, the whisper of a prayer. At street level, you open the iron grate with a grunt. The alley yawns open like a wound. You are 16, and you are a night soiler's apprentice. No one writes songs for boys like you. The air is heavy with moisture, and beneath your boots, the cobblestones glisten not with dew, but with something fouler. The gutters are full, chamber pots spilled from windows above, piss from the tavern crowd, the unnameable sludge of a city trying to purge itself. You crouch, brace your knees, and dip your scoop into the muck. The sound it makes, that sucking squelch, is your morning hymn. Overhead, a scrap of white cloth flutters from a shuttered window. Someone has hung washing. You wonder why they bother. The sky bruises with the earliest light, and already a few carts rattle down the avenue, pulled by horses too old for war. The cries of vendors echo from across the quarter, thin, hungry voices selling onions, nails, scraps of lace. You pause a moment to breathe through your mouth, then dump your first bucket into the larger barrel strapped to your cart. The barrel stinks worse than sin. You cover it with a square of cloth dipped in vinegar and straw ash. A man once told you that this was noble work, that Paris could not breathe without you. He said it with the hollow cheer of a man trying to make peace with dirt beneath his nails. Perhaps it's true, but nobility is a poor balm when your fingers blister from scraping filth or when passers-by cross the street to avoid your scent. As the hour warms, the city yawns awake. Women in soot-marked aprons empty their wash into the gutters you just cleaned. Children chase rats with sticks. A one-eyed mongrel trots behind your cart, hoping for scraps. Somewhere, a gunshot cracks. Not war, not yet. Just a drunk, or a warning. Paris speaks in noises, and you've learned how to listen without flinching. You stop at the corner of Rue des Fossés Saint-Marcel. Here, the waste runs thickest. A man leans against the stone wall smoking a pipe carved from bone. His hat is tilted low, shadowing a face too tired to hate the morning. He nods at you, not out of kindness, but recognition. You nod back. In this line of work, you learn to measure a soul by the way they avoid your eyes. By mid-morning, the barrel is near full. You pause to wipe your brow, though the cloth is no cleaner than your hands. Your master hasn't joined you today. He drinks when the weather turns damp, and when it doesn't, you carry the work alone. Not because you're strong, but because no one else will. As you haul the cart down to the depot by the Seine, a place where waste is dumped and forgotten, you catch sight of the Hotel de Ville. Flags fly there. A crowd gathers, clutching pamphlets and shouting slogans. You hear the word liberté again. Someone sings the Marseillaise. But here, in the bowels of Paris, freedom smells like rot. You reach the dump. With practiced rhythm you unfasten the lid, brace your body, and tip the contents into the pit. The barrel thuds empty with a wet echo. You stare into the abyss below. Steam rises. Flies hum. You say nothing. Then quietly, you sit. On the stone ledge, your legs swinging over the void, you reach into your coat and pull out a crust of bread saved from yesterday. It's hard as roof tile. Still, you chew. It is the only thing that doesn't taste of refuse. Across the pit, another night soiler sits in silence, mirroring you. You do not speak. There is nothing to say that hasn't been said in the stench between you. Above, the bells of Notre Dame toll faintly through the smoke. Their sound doesn't reach your chest. Not anymore, but you hear them, faint and far, like a memory not your own. So you eat, and you breathe, and you wait for the next morning to rise again in filth. And beneath the banners of revolution you remain, the unseen, the necessary, the boy who scrubs the world clean while it marches toward glory. If the silence of this story touched something within you, consider subscribing or sharing it with someone who listens for echoes in forgotten corners of history. What part of this beginning stayed with you the most? The stench, the silence, or the sound of bells that no longer ring for you? The marsh begins where the city ends. A slow unraveling of stone into silt, of smoke into mist. By the time your boots leave the cracked cobbles of Paris and sink into the sponge-soft paths beyond the walls, the sun has begun its climb behind a gauze of pale cloud. The road here does not welcome. It absorbs, the trees leaning close, limbs crooked like bony fingers, their bark glistening with damp. Your cart is empty now, its barrel scrubbed and the vinegar rags hung out to dry. You've been sent to collect. Not waste this time, but something stranger, jars of leeches, destined for a physician who believes bleeding can balance the soul. You find him by the water's edge, just where the reeds grow thickest and the smell of rot turns sweet. He's crouched low, his knees folded like a heron's, sleeves rolled past liver-spotted elbows. His coat is stained with swamp water, and something darker his hands, the colour of oiled parchment, moves slowly over a shallow basin filled with squirming life. He hums as he works. A slow, drifting tune, no words, only memory. You stop a few steps away, not wanting to interrupt the ritual. The man does not turn. He knows you're there. You feel it in the way his humming deepens, the way his left hand lifts a single leech by its swollen belly and holds it to the light. They sing, he says, without looking, when they've had enough. You nod, though the sound unnerves you. The leeches, glistening, pulsing, seem more like veins ripped from flesh than creatures of their own. Their skins are glossy black, their movement sinuous and silent. The jars on his blanket clink softly, as he seals each one with wax and linen. Inside, they twist, searching for warmth. He finally turns, eyes bleary with age, and something else. Sorrow, maybe, or simply too many dawns in the fog. "You've come from Dr. Mézières?" he asks. You nod again. He snorts softly, a sound like wind through a cracked reed. He still believes they cure melancholy, wouldn't know real sadness if it bit him in the leg. He hands you a jar. It's warm. The creatures inside, pressed toward the glass, drawn to your body heat. You flinch. He chuckles. Don't fear them. They know what they're for. You glance around. There is no house nearby, no cart, no shelter. Only the bog, the sky, and the old man, with his blood-fed wares. Where do you live? You ask. He shrugs. Here there. The marsh is enough. They bring what I need. Coin, cloth, bread sometimes. I don't go in much anymore. Paris stinks of new gods. He gestures toward a bundle by the reeds. You kneel to help, securing each jar in the straw-lined crate. Your fingers brushes, they are colder than the water. He notices. You've never done this before, have you? You shake your head. He reaches slowly into his satchel and pulls out a leather pouch. Inside, nestled in a fold of moss, lies a single leech. larger than the others. Its body thick with blood, its skin nearly translucent. This one, he murmurs, saved a man once. Bit clean through the fever, drank until the poison bled out. He lived, went home to his children. You glance at him, curious. What happened to them? His eyes grow distant. They were taken in the draft. Both boys, 18 and 16, marched south in winter, never came back. His voice carries no bitterness, only fatigue. He replaces the leech, carefully. The pouch vanishes into his coat. You sit with him a while, the mist curling around your knees. The crates packed and ready. He hums again. The same tune, though now it carries words under his breath. A lullaby, perhaps. The language is old. You don't understand it, but the ache in it is familiar. He stands with effort, stretching joints that creak like thawing ice. Tell your doctor they're fresh. Drunk on marsh blood and moonlight. You nod, hoisting the crate to your shoulder. It is heavier than you expected. Before you turn back toward the city, you ask, "What do you call them?" He looks at the jars, the little dancers in their glass prisons. Blind and hungry. They're children, he says. They take pain so others don't have to. You leave the marsh without another word. Behind you, the mist thickens. When you glance back, he is gone. By the time you reach the edge of Paris, the sounds of morning have overtaken the silence. Carts rumble, dogs bark. A woman screams at her husband in the distance. You pass a physician's door and knock. A boy takes the crate. No questions, no thanks. You walk back alone. That night, as you lie in your garret, you cannot sleep. Not because of the cold or the ache in your back. Those are familiar. But because in the quiet, you hear the hum again. That slow, wordless song rising from the dark water. And for the first time, the city feels too dry. The needle moves faster than thought. In and out through fraying cloth, through days that stretch and vanish like smoke in sunlight. You watch her hands, knotted, trembling slightly, but still precise. Thread tightens beneath her fingers like a breath being held, and then releases with a quiet exhale of linen. In the dim attic light, she sews not with pride, but with persistence. You arrived just past noon, your boots dripping with filth from a day's work near the Seine. She had not flinched when you knocked, only opened the door with a sigh and gestured silently toward the pile of cloth. You stepped around the cradle near the wall, long empty, and sat on a wooden stool beside her. She is known on your street only as La Veuve, the widow. Some call her that, out of pity, others out of respect. All know she stitches for the dead. The room smells of boiled starch and old grief. A fire burns low in the hearth, feeding on bits of crate wood and an old chair leg. It casts a flickering orange light across her sewing table. Beside her sits a box, neatly organized of white linen, black thread, and tricolour scraps. Each bundle has its purpose. You watch her assemble a cockade first. A swirl of red, white and blue. She folds each colour with methodical grace, pinches them into shape, and binds them tight with a single straight pin. For the soldiers, she murmurs, her voice a rasp, worn thin by years. Even the boys with no shoes wear them now. She passes it to you. You hold it gently in your palm. It's small, no larger than a coin, but it feels heavier than it looks. Then she takes up another cloth, wider, plainer, unbleached. Her hands move slower now. The needle finds its rhythm, stitching edge to edge, quiet and certain, a shroud, for someone nameless. When I was a girl, she says, I stitched silk, gowns for the wives of bankers. I used to embroider roses at the hem, took hours, days even, and now her eyes linger on the cloth. The needle pauses. They don't want roses anymore. You ask her why she still does it. Why keep stitching shrouds when there are so many already piled beneath the stones? She does not answer right away. Instead, she rises and crosses the room. From a narrow drawer, she lifts a tangle of cord. At first, it looks like any rope, coarse and rough, coiled tightly. But when she lays it before you, the shape tells another story. A noose. She handles it with care, as though it were sacred or dangerous. She places your hand beside it, palm up. This is what they give the seamstresses now, she says. Not satin, not lace, just rope. I was paid to bind a dozen for the prisons last week. Sent them through the committee's door in a sack like onions. You don't move. She lifts the rope. Slowly, deliberately, she loops it once, then twice. Her fingers know the pattern. She does not flinch. You know, she says, voice low, a noose isn't just tied, it's stitched, in a way. 7 coils. Always 7. Anything else is just a knot. She hands it to you. The fibers are rough against your skin. You feel the weight of it, not just in your hand, but behind your eyes. A pressure that settles, uninvited. She returns to her chair, reaches for a bolt of muslin, and begins a new stitch. This one is longer, softer. She hums now, not a song, but something close. A pattern of breath, timed with the needle's rise and fall. I lost him in '89, she says without looking up. My husband, guillotined. They said he hoarded grain. He couldn't even feed us most weeks. You look at the shroud she's working on. He went without one, she says. The clock ticks in the corner. Somewhere outside, a cart rattles past. The city lives, but in here, time walks slower. She finishes the shroud, folds it neatly, stacks it beside 2 others. You hand her the cockade she gave you earlier. She pins it to a child's bonnet resting on a hook by the door. Your work is harder, she says softly, but mine stays longer. As dusk settles over the rooftops, the wind rises. It slides beneath the shutters, curling through the room like a ghost, seeking something lost. A thread lifts from the table, sways gently in the breeze, and settles again. You thank her and step out into the evening. Behind you, the needle moves again. In out, like breath, like time, like memory stitched back together in linen and thread. And somewhere not far off, the wind catches a gallows rope and sets it to swaying, 7 coils turning in the half-light, singing softly to the city that forgot how to mourn. You find her by the scent, not of sweetness or warmth, but of scorched crust and damp brick. The bakery on Rue de Petit Carreau has no sign, no bell over its door, no smiling face at the counter. It is a place one enters not with hunger, but with caution. A crumbling facade, scorched in places, plaster flaking like old pastry. The door creaks as you push it open. Inside it is dim and low-ceilinged, a single window streaked with soot, letting in a watery shaft of light. Shelves sag with uneven loaves, some burned, others pale. The air is thick with flour dust, like ash caught mid-fall. A hearth crackles weakly in the back, barely enough to warm the bones. The scent is wrong. Sour, metallic, not bread alone. Something older, more elemental. She sits at the table near the oven, a shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, streaks of white in her hair. Her eyes do not lift as you enter. She is busy with her work. 1 loaf, 1 knife. A ritual. She slices off the end, not neatly, but with the firm, brutal pressure of someone accustomed to tough crust. The slice is held close, then closer still. She breathes it in, eyes closed. Then, slowly, she places a corner on her tongue, holds it there. Wait, no one speaks. Not yet. You stand awkwardly, the door still open behind you, letting in the distant cry of a vendor, and the clatter of wheels on stone. She waves a hand without looking. You shut the door. At last, she swallows. No almonds, she says, voice low and rough. No bitter scent, no dust of quicklime, just yeast, flour, and yesterday's water. You exhale, not realizing you were holding your breath. She finally looks at you. First time collecting from here? You nod. She wipes her mouth with a corner of her sleeve and gestures toward the table, where a stack of loaves waits in rough burlap. You can take them. They'll be sold by midday. The ones I can't stomach, I burn. You glance toward the hearth. A few blackened loaves smolder there, their crusts caved like broken ribs. Why you ask, unsure if the question is polite. She shrugs. Because I've nothing left to lose. She picks up another loaf. Begins again. Slice. Sniff. Taste. Wait. They don't trust anyone anymore. She mutters. Last spring, a family died in Belleville. The boy brought home sweet bread from a stranger. All 4 gone by morning. Since then, every arrondissement has someone like me. They call it an honor. She spits the last word like something foul. You notice her teeth, or the lack of them. The front few are missing, the rest blackened or chipped. The bread can't be helping. Hard crust, no milk, no honey, just flour and fear. How long have you done this? You ask. She doesn't look up. Just chews. Swallows. Since the commune posted notices. Since they decided bread might be a battlefield too. I volunteered. I knew what to look for. Had a knack. You sense there's more. And before. She pauses. Her jaw tightens. I used to bake, for the convent, on Rue Clery, before they shuttered it. Before the sisters vanished. I knew yeast like other women knew prayer. She looks at her hands. Now I taste what others won't risk. The loaves are nearly gone. One remains. This one she handles differently, gently. She slices it with care, peels it open slightly. Inside a streak of dark red. You flinch. She laughs softly. Jam? Just jam. From a neighbor. He brings me quince preserves when he has them. Says I deserve something sweet now and then. She tears off a piece, holds it out. Try it. You hesitate. Go on, she says. If I was wrong, I'd be dead already. You bite. It's dry, dense, but the jam glows through it, tart, warm, clinging to the tongue like memory. She smiles for the first time. You see, there's still some flavor left in the world. You nod. As you prepare to leave, she wraps the last loaf carefully, tying it with twine. She places it in your hands. For you, she says. And no, I don't need to taste it. I made it myself. At the door, you glance back. Why keep doing it, you ask. Her eyes are steady. Because if someone must suffer to keep others alive, let it be me. I already know what hunger feels like. You step into the street. Behind you, she bites into another slice, expression unriddable. And the oven crackles on, burning away the bread that cannot be trusted. You reach the atelier just after twilight, when the fog begins to thicken and the streets lose their edges. The building is unmarked, tucked behind a former music hall where laughter has long since been replaced by dust. The windows are dark, save for one on the upper floor, a flickering orange glow, as if someone had trapped the last ember of the day in a glass jar. You climb the narrow stairwell, the walls close and cracked with age. Your boots echo too loudly on the stone. At the top, the door is ajar, and you hesitate, unsure. Then, a voice calls out, dry and clear, come in and wipe your feet. You step into a room where silence feels crafted, not natural. It is not quiet, but curated, the hush of a place where memory lives in stillness. Every surface is occupied. Mannequin heads rest like decapitated saints on shelves, each bearing an expression both vivid and impossible. Eyes half-lidded, lips parted in frozen murmurs. Some smile faintly, others grimace. One appears to weep. At the center of the room, standing beneath a glass-domed oil lamp, is a woman in a soot-colored apron. Her sleeves are rolled, her hair tied with twine. Her face is unadorned but sharp, a jawline cut like a chisel mark. In her hands she cradles a face, not her own, not anyone's now. A mask, still soft, still gleaming. Fresh wax, molded in the likeness of a man whose eyes are now closed forever. His features are serene, too serene. You wonder if death really looks that peaceful, or if this is her invention. She looks up at you. Shut the door. The wax sets faster without the draft. You obey. She places the mask gently onto a padded board, aligning it beside others. A row of the recently dead, each one labelled in chalk. Names, dates, the occasional crime. Robbery, treason, blasphemy. Some are marked only with a question mark. You're here to carry them, she says. You nod. She begins cleaning her tools, curved scrapers, heated spoons, a knife so thin it flexes with her breath. I used to do portraits, she tells you, voice even. Back when people wanted to remember the living. Now they only pay for the dead. She dips a cloth into a basin of warm water and wipes her hands. Then the face. The wax glistens, still pliant. She adjusts the mouth slightly, makes it more human. These go in the windows, she says. They line the streets. A warning, they say. I think it's a ritual. The city doesn't mourn anymore. It displays. You step closer. One face catches your eye. Young, barely more than a boy. Eyes wide, mouth open in surprise. You ask her if he died frightened. She doesn't look at you. They all do. But I smooth the fear out. No one wants to see the truth. just the spectacle. She turns to a table in the corner. There, laid out on silk, are wooden eyes. Glass was too expensive this season, she explains. These are carved by hand, painted with care. No two match exactly. She picks up a pair and presses them into a wax skull with practiced ease. The effect is immediate. The mask changes from inanimate to eerily aware. It stares as if listening. They'll be placed tomorrow, she says. Along Rue Saint-Antoine. The committee wants them seen before the next wave. You ask how many she's made. She does not answer with words. Instead, she gestures to a large ledger on the table. Page after page of names, sketches, dates. 100. They asked for 4 more today, she murmurs. I haven't even scraped the last ones from the molds. She crosses the room, pulls open a drawer, and lifts out a small package, wrapped in linen. She unfolds it carefully. Inside, a child's face, so small, barely formed, no nose, no mouth, just the ghost of features. A mistake, a future commission. She doesn't explain, just folds it away again. You ask why she keeps going. Her voice is low, almost distant now. Because forgetting is worse than death. The moment no one remembers your face, you disappear. She picks up a candle and lights it with a trembling hand. You'd be surprised how many people come here at night. Mothers, lovers, sometimes strangers. Just to look, just to see if someone's face is still here. She sets the candle before the row of completed masks. Its flame dances in their wooden eyes. For a moment the room feels crowded. Watch. Then she turns to you and hands you a crate. You'll take them gently, she says. No jostling. If they break forever. You nod. The crate is lined with wool, each mask wrapped like glassware. As you carry it, their silence follows you, the silence of those who cannot speak for themselves, whose final moment has been shaped, smoothed, and set in wax. As you step into the cold, the night presses close. The street lamp flickers, the wind stirs paper along the stones, and in the shuttered atelier above, the woman sits alone, a sculptor of the forgotten, breathing life into death with every pull of her knife. Before dawn, the carts begin to roll. They groan over the cobbles like wounded beasts, wood straining beneath iron-rimmed wheels, pulled by horses with ribs like bowed slats of roof timber. You wait by the depot near the place to torn, breath curling in the cold, listening for the first clatter of wheels on stone. The smell arrives before the cart does, sour, metallic and unmistakable. Then, from the fog, it appears. The man who drives it is old, but not bent. Wiry as a root. His coat is long, heavy with dried blood, and the scent of vinegar. He calls himself Marcel, and he never stops whistling. A low, slow tune, meandering and wordless. It's the kind of sound someone makes to hold madness at bay. Get up, he says, nodding toward the rear. They don't load themselves. You climb aboard. The cart is lined with straw, but it is not clean. Dried stains mark where heads rolled, where blood pooled, where bodies bounced on their final journey from the guillotine to the pit. You hold your breath as you lift the fur. He is light. Too light. A boy, maybe 16, his face slack in death, but still echoing the fear that claimed him. His shirt is damp. His hands are bound with twine. You lay him gently in the straw. Marcel tosses you a cloth. Cover their faces, he mutters. Not for them, for you. More arrive. 2 men, heavier. One still wears the tricolour sash of a minor official. His head lies beside him, the mouth open in a rictus that suggests he had more to say. You tuck the cloth over his features, trying not to meet the gaze of eyes that no longer blink. You ride beside Marcel as he steers the cart south, away from the place, toward the edge of the city where the trenches gape like broken mouths in the earth. He whistles. Always he whistles. Does it help, you ask? He glances at you, surprised. As if he'd forgotten you were there. Not really, he says. But silence is worse. He nods toward the sky, pale with morning. They breathe, you know, he says. Right after. Not every time, but sometimes, the chest rises. Like a sigh. Makes you think they're still in there. You say nothing. I had a priest once, he continues. Tried to bless them as we rode. Lasted 2 days. Drank himself blind after a head rolled onto his lap. You look back at the cart. The cloths shift gently with the jostling. A hand slides loose and dangles over the side. You tuck it back beneath the shroud. When you arrive at the trench, the gravediggers are waiting. 3 men with shovels and expressions carved from stone. They nod, no words, no greetings, just motion. You and Marcel lift the bodies one by one. He counts softly under his breath. 12 today. Fewer than yesterday. You ask him if that means the executions are slowing. He snorts. No, just fewer bodies left to kill. He lights a pipe as the last corpse is lowered. The smoke curls up into the sky, thin and bitter. You stand at the edge of the trench, looking down. Some wear boots, others none. Some have fine coats, others only shirts. Death is the great equalizer, but it does not erase contrast. As the shovels begin to fall, Marcel speaks again. You know the worst part? You wait, they all stink the same. Rich, poor, innocent, monster. Doesn't matter. The rot is blind. You ride back with the empty cart. The straw is stained anew. The breeze carries the scent behind you like a flag. Marcel doesn't whistle this time. Instead he hums something slower. A lullaby, maybe. Or a hymn. You don't recognize it. At the depot he dismounts and begins to scrub the wood with a bucket of vinegar and stale urine. The smell is overwhelming, but the blood doesn't lift. Not fully. You take the brush from him, and he lets you. Together, in silence, you scrub. The wood absorbs it all. The stories, the names, the sighs. It remembers what others would rather forget. When the cart is clean, or clean enough, Marcel leans against the wall and lights another pipe. They dream sometimes, he says. The ones who died fast. You can see it in their faces, like they left something behind. You think I'm mad? You shake your head. He nods, stares at the cart. I used to carry bread, he says after a while, to convents, to schools, warm loaves in the morning. That was before the world turned sour. You ask why he stayed. He shrugs. Someone has to carry them. The bells ring in the distance. A faint toll from Notre Dame. Marcel whistles again, and you walk home beneath a sky that no longer feels like it belongs to the living. The soot is in everything. It blackens the walls, streaks the window panes, clings to your fingernails like guilt. Even the light here is grey. No gold, no warmth. Only a pale illumination that makes every corner feel colder. You stand in the workshop of Morel Dubois, a powder maker, a widow, a woman who turns bones into thunder. She greets you without words, nodding toward the grinding bench. Her eyes are bloodshot, rimmed with charcoal dust. Her apron hangs loose over a frame made wiry from hunger. Her hands, though, her hands are steady. You see the mortar first. A deep stone basin, its rim worn smooth by years of grinding. Inside, a pale mound of powder, flecked with something darker. Not ash. Not entirely. Bone meal. Firmes burn best, she says, voice hoarse. Less marrow. Finer grain. You swallow the lump in your throat. On a nearby table, bundles of charred sticks lie wrapped in muslin. They are not sticks. They are finger bones. Rib splinters. Jaw fragments. The remnants of revolutions dead, carted from mass graves, dried in ovens, crushed beneath iron pestles. Morel walks to the furnace, throws open its belly, and stokes the coals with a broken chair leg. The flames rise sluggishly, reluctant in the morning chill. The workshop reeks of sulphur and marrow. She reaches for a sack labelled with red chalk. Your delivery? She asks. You nod, handing over a folded sheet from the quartermaster. A requisition for 10 pounds of powder by week's end. She scans it with no expression. Then grind, she says. You take your place at the second bench. The pestle is heavier than it looks. A solid length of iron worn from use. You press it into the mortar and begin to move it in circles. Slow, then faster. The crunch is faint at first, then rhythmic. You feel it in your wrists, your shoulders, a dull vibration that travels into your spine. Not too fast, she murmurs. It has to be even. If it clumps, it misfires. You slow your pace. The powder begins to soften, its texture fine as flour, its colour like wet parchment. Still that scent lingers, burnt ivory, scorched death. Morel moves like a ghost through the workshop. She works barefoot, her soles blackened with soot, her dress hem torn. She hums softly, an old tune, older than the war. Something that sounds like a lullaby. It winds through the space threading between the pestles and the bones. You ask her how she learnt this? My husband, she says. He taught me, before the draft took him. She pauses by the open crate of raw material, pulls out a humerus, brushes it clean. He made fireworks once. For festivals. I helped him. Now I make powder. For muskets. For cannon. The only sparks left are the ones that kill. She places the bone on the chopping block, raises a cleaver, and brings it down. The crack is sharp, final. The fragments scatter, and she gathers them with practiced care. What happened to him, you ask? She doesn't look at you. He died in the south. Some hillside. They sent back a button. A silence settles, broken only by the scraping of pestle on stone. Later, as the sky lightens, she pulls out a brass sieve and begins to filter the powder. The finer grains fall through into a basin lined with cloth. She ties it off like a parcel and sets it as 50 cartridges worth, she says. Enough for one morning's fight. You ask if it ever bothers her. The work. She glances at you. There is no anger in her gaze, only exhaustion. Grief needs somewhere to go, she says. Mine went into this. She lifts her sleeve. A fresh burn runs along her forearm, red and blistered. The furnace kicked back last week. Got too eager. You reach for another bone. A vertebra this time, hollow and brittle. As you set it in the mortar, you hesitate. How many? She looks up. How many people have passed through here? She shrugs. I stopped counting after 200. When it's dry enough, anything burns. She moves to the ledger on the table, scribbles in a new entry. The date, the weight, the initials of the requisitioning officer. I keep track for the records, she says. But names? They don't matter anymore, only ounce. You watch her tie off another parcel. She lays it beside the others, like a baker preparing bread for delivery. Outside, the sound of gunfire cracks the air, not distant enough to feel safe. She doesn't flinch. They'll want more tomorrow, she says. They always do. The workshop grows warmer as the furnace roars higher. Shadows flicker on the walls. You continue grinding, the rhythm settling into your body like a heartbeat. Morel hums again, a melody almost sweet beneath the ashes. And as the dust coats your skin, clings to your breath, you realize you are feeding the fire now. Not with fuel, but with the past. By candlelight, the ink runs thinner. It pools in the quill's edge, hesitating, then stretches itself across the paper like a shadow trying not to be seen. You sit at a desk, not your own, shoulders curled, eyes sore, copying names from one yellowed sheet to another. Names that echo with the weight of accusations, whispered betrayals, and deaths not yet delivered. The chamber is long, stone-walled, and windowless. Its silence feels sacred, though no prayers are said here. The only sounds are the scratch of quills, the occasional cough, the soft sigh of paper turning. Around you, others sit hunched at their stations, pale young clerks with calloused fingers and unreadable eyes. You are the newest, the quietest. You are here, not by ambition, but by assignment. The man who oversees this room, a bureaucrat with wrists like sticks and a voice dry as paper, instructed you simply, copy what you see, do not alter, do not speak, do not ask. And so, you write. Each morning, new names arrive. A stack, bound with string, sealed with the tricolour wax of the committee. Sometimes, the names are accompanied by short notes, a location, an age, a phrase like suspected sympathizer, or former nobility. Sometimes, there is only a name, first and last, no reason. You've grown used to it, or you thought you had. Until today. Today, the boy arrives. He's led in by a guard who leaves without speaking. Blindfolded, thin, no older than 10. His face is smudged with soot, his shirt collar frayed. They say his voice is perfect, soft, clear, steady. He stands beside your desk, and the overseer instructs you both. You will read, he will repeat. You look up, startled. Why? The man does not pause in his own writing. For record, for clarity, for truth, you return your gaze to the page. The first name, Elise Moreau, age 34, laundress. You whisper it. The boy repeats it, not mimicking, but embodying, as if he knows the woman, as if he sees her standing in the corner, soaked from river water, hands red from lye. Next, Henry Vidrin. Baker, 41. Henry Vidrins. The boy intones. Boulanger, 41. His voice is like a bell rung in a stone tower. Resonant, pure, inevitable. You continue. Name after name. Sometimes he stumbles. Sometimes you do. But neither of you stops. The list grows shorter. The candles burn lower. The air thickens with the scent of wax and ink. You pause only once, when your fingers tremble, and the quill drips onto the paper. A blot. It spreads across the name like rot. The boy says nothing. Later, he hums. Just a note or two, barely more than breath. A melody with no ending. You ask his name. He tilts his head. They said I shouldn't tell. He says softly. Said it would be cleaner. You nod. You don't press. By midday, your voice grows hoarse. The boy speaks for you now, reading from your lips as you mouth each word. The names go on, until you reach it. A name you know. Line 37. Clemence Duval. You freeze. You picture her face, your neighbor, the woman who once shared her onions with you, who patched your coat when the seams burst last winter. She laughed like someone who hadn't learned to be afraid. And now her name is here. Your hand shakes. The boy waits. You try to speak, but your throat closes. He leans closer. Clemence Duval, he whispers, and his voice carries no judgment, just sorrow, like the tolling of a bell. The ink blurs beneath your gaze. You finish the list. When the pages are done, the overseer collects them without comment. The boy is led out again, a hand on his shoulder, his blindfold replaced. You watch him vanish into the corridor, his small form swallowed by the dark. You remain. The candles burn low. The wall before you is bare stone, but in your mind it is covered with names, thousands, maybe more, each one a breath, a life, a hand once held. You rise, gather your ink-stained rags, and step out into the lightless hallway. Your footsteps echo. You do not know where the names go next. You only know they no longer belong to the living. And tomorrow there will be more. The smell of meat hits first, not fresh, not yet rotting, but thick with iron and salt. It clings to the doorway like a hand on your chest. You pause before entering, the morning air behind you still laced with coal smoke and yesterday's bread crust. Inside, it is warmer, wetter. The scent of blood has a temperature. He's already at work. The butcher's a tall man, with shoulders like wine barrels and a brow that never smooths. His apron is stiff with dried fat and red along the seams. He sharpens his cleaver in rhythmic strokes. Back, forward, pause. Each motion carries memory. You're late, he says without looking. You mutter something about the tram delay, though. There was no tram, just hesitation. He nods toward the table. 2 lamb carcasses lie splayed open, ribs curved like cathedral arches. A third hangs on the hook above, swinging gently, as if swaying to the sound of its own undoing. Wash the boards, he says. Will be done before the market crowd stirs. You obey, fetching the pail of vinegar and bristle brush from the corner. The water is grey from yesterday's rinse. But it doesn't matter. Nothing in this place is truly clean. As you scrub, he speaks. Not to you, but to the meat. You know, he says, slicing into the flank with surgical ease. I used to take Sundays off. He lifts the flesh and carves downward, revealing the marbled red beneath. Roast a chicken. Let my daughter braid my beard. He chuckles, though the sound is hollow. Now, I get more work on Sundays than the rest of the week combined. Everyone's afraid of famine, but no one's afraid to eat. You look up. His hands move fast, but not with anger, with purpose. He steps to the next carcass and begins again. After the king fell, people stopped asking where the meat came from. They just wanted it cheap. Patriot pork, they call it. Republican veal. He slaps a slab of flesh onto the block. Same cow? Different lie. You keep scrubbing. He points to a small crate near the hearth. Bones for the committee. They boil them for broth. Sometimes I see teeth still stuck in the sockets. He spits into the fire. The flames hiss, indifferent. You see that cleaver? He says suddenly, pointing to the rack. You glance up. The blade is wide, heavy, its edge chipped from years of labour. That one's from my father. Used it in the wars, he told me something once. He pauses, wipes his hands. He said, a knife is only clean when it's in the sheath. Once it's out, even for bread, it remembers blood. He hands you a cloth. Wipe the counter. You do. The wood is dark with age, with use. with history pressed into its grain like fingerprints on old glass. He sighs. I told them I was loyal, wrote it on the door. Citizen butcher, wore the cockade, sold meat at a loss. He lowers his voice. They still came. Took my wife for questioning. Said she sold liver to priests. Priests don't even eat liver. You stop wiping. She never came back, he says. His voice doesn't break. It folds. My daughter won't eat veal anymore. Says it looks too much like baby's flesh. The fire cracks. He opens the back door and tosses a bucket of waste into the alley. Rats scatter. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows, oblivious. He stands in the doorway, looking out. Some days, I wonder if it's still meat I'm carving. You don't ask what he means. You don't want to know. He turns back, face hard again. Wrap the cuts. Market opens in an hour. You reach for the parchment and twine. The meat is still warm. You wrap it gently, as if handling something alive. He sets a wrapped bundle beside the others. Stamps it with a wax seal bearing the tricolour. For the people, he mutters. The phrase tastes bitter. You leave just before the sun fully rises, your hands raw from vinegar, your apron damp with memory. Behind you, the cleaver falls again. Clean. Precise. Unquestioning. You walk beyond the edge of Paris, past the smoke-curled rooftops, and the stone mouths of the city gates, until the houses thin and the trees begin to whisper again. The path turns soft here, mud beneath your soles, trodden by carts and bare feet alike. It is not far, yet it feels distant, as though the very air shifts the moment the city no longer claims it. The cottage is small, half swallowed by ivy, its chimney puffing gently against the grey sky. A low fence circles the yard, more symbolic than protective. You push the gate open and step inside. She greets you before you knock. A woman in her 40s, perhaps, though her eyes carry decades beyond that. Her apron is stained with milk and damp earth, and her sleeves are rolled to the elbows. She does not smile, but her voice is soft. You're early. That's kind. You follow her into the cottage. It smells of pine sap and warm cloth, of stewed apples, and the sharp sweetness of milk, just beginning to sour. The hearth crackles faintly. Bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling beams, swaying with each draught. On a low bench near the fire, a cradle rocks, empty now, but lined with blankets too fine for the walls around them. She pours you tea, thin but warm, and offers a heel of bread. You thank her, though hunger is not why you've come. She gestures toward the side room. They're asleep now, mostly. You glance through the doorway. There, in a room no larger than a pantry, lie 3 infants swaddled in grey linen. Each rests in their own box, no two alike. One a drawer, one a wine crate, one a basket with a hole patched in its side. They do not stir. They sleep more than they cry, she says. They already know there's no one left to hear them. You ask how long she's kept them. The first came a year ago, she replies. After the September killings, her mother was named Cecile, a seamstress. Too kind to flee, I held the child the night after. She pauses, sets the kettle back on the hook. Since then, they've come when they come. A cousin brings them, or a guard, or no one at all. You ask if they are orphans. She nods, but not abandoned, not truly, just left behind by history. She unbuttons the front of her blouse. Her body is thin, but her breasts are full. She wraps herself in a shawl, steps into the next room, and lifts one of the children gently. The infant does not wake, but latches sleepily. You stand in the doorway, unsure if you are intruding. She glances over her shoulder. Stay. They deserve to be seen. You watch in silence. The child suckles slowly, a faint hum in its throat. The woman rocks on her heels, whispering something under her breath. Not words, just sounds shaped by tenderness. The light from the hearth flickers across the child's skin. So small, so pale. She switches to the other breast. This one's name is Emile, she says. His mother was a baker's wife, executed for hoarding flour. They took her when she wouldn't open the cellar. She doesn't cry. I was one of 3 women chosen to nurse him. I'm the only one left. You ask how she keeps her milk. She shrugs. Grief. Maybe. Or habit. Or God. I don't know anymore. You help her change the linens. The cloths are coarse but clean. She folds each one carefully. places a sprig of rosemary in the corner of every box. They say it helps them dream sweeter, she murmurs. I don't know if they dream of mothers or monsters. You wrap one of the children in a new blanket. She watches you with a look that's hard to name. You've seen enough death, she says. It's good to hold something still living. She places the child back in the basket, strokes his cheek. When I die, she says softly, I want no stone, just a tree. And I want someone to carry the roots in their arms the way I carry them now. The wind stirs outside, a shutter creaks. You help her prepare bottles of goat's milk for the night, though she will likely not sleep. You know this now. She doesn't keep time like other people. Her hours are measured in ounces and crime. As you leave, she gives you a small bundle of cheesecloth wrapped in sage. For the smell, she says. If it follows you, you nod. But the smell that follows you is not sour milk or smoke. It is memory, of arms that ache from holding, of silence that tastes like lullabies left unsung, and of a woman who nourishes the future, one mouth at a time in a world that no longer knows how to feed its own. The cathedral is empty by nightfall, its great doors grown shut long before the sky turns black, and the last supplicant, old bent breath trailing like thread, shuffles out without a word. No candles are lit after dusk, no incense, no bells. The organ keys have not been touched in months, but still, the dust gathers, and someone must sweep it away. You arrive just past midnight, when the moon paints the stained glass in silver instead of colour. The nave is colder than the streets, its air vast and unmoving. You clutch your broom like a staff, though it offers no power, no blessing. Your footsteps echo through the stone hall as you move past the rows of silent pews. Their wood has darkened with time and grief. At the altar, the cloth is faded, stitched with old gold. It flutters once as you pass, not by wind, but by memory. He meets you near the transept. The boy, no older than 12, with hands too small for the broom he carries. His face is streaked with ash. His eyes are alert but kind. He doesn't speak right away, just nods. You nod back. Together you sweep not dust, but history. Scraps of paper, fragments of wax, a withered poppy petal, charred ends of burned pamphlets. Every now and then, something stranger, a button, a child's marble, a tooth. You do not ask how they came to be there. The boy hums softly as he works. You ask his name. He shrugs. Luke, he says. For now, you let it sit. He tells you he comes here most nights, paid with crusts and copper to clean what others dare not touch. He says he likes it. Quieter than the hospitals, he adds. You wonder how he knows. He shows you the pile he's been collecting, not bones or papers, but teeth, loose discarded, scattered near the pulpit, and between flagstones. I'll be a dentist one day, he says. When things go back. Back where? You wonder, but you don't ask. You reach the rear gallery. There, the soot is thickest. A pile of ashes rests near the lectern, blackened remains of books once shelved with reverence. The revolution does not favour the written word unless it shouts. Luke watches you kneel, brush the fragments gently into a pail. Last week, he says, they burned the parish records. Said names were dangerous. You pause. Do you miss them? You ask. He shrugs again. I didn't know them, but the pages were soft. They smelled like rain. You nod. Outside, the bells do not toll. Their silence is louder than their sound. You finish the floor. Luke picks up a candle stub and pockets it. For later, he says. Sometimes I light one just to see what shadows remember. You help him dump the dust behind the altar. It's not a proper disposal, but no one checks. The dead, after all, leave little complaint. You sit for a moment on the last pew. Luke joins you. The cold seeps through your coat. The air tastes of stone and ash and something sweeter, maybe hope. Why do you do it, he asks. You think for a moment. Because even forgotten places deserve to be clean. He nods. The answer is enough. He pulls from his coat a dried fig, splits it with a pocket knife, offers you half. You eat in silence. Before you go, you both walk the aisle once more, making sure the floor is bare. He lights the stub of candle with flint, sets it beneath the statue of a veiled saint, whose eyes have been scratched away. Good night, he whispers. You leave by the side door. The stars blink faintly through the fog, and behind you, in the stone belly of the cathedral, a boy dreams of teeth and silence, sweeping away the soot of those who left no footprints behind. The stairs wind like a spine, narrow, uneven, climbing higher than any voice dares carry. You grip the iron railing as you ascend, each step colder than the last. The air grows thinner, touched with the scent of old rope, rust and pigeon droppings. The stone walls of Notre Dame close around you like ribs drawn tight. Paris fades below. At the top, the door opens with a wheeze of wood swollen from rain. The bell chamber waits beyond, vast and breathless, lit only by what morning light can pierce the stained slits of the tower. The bell itself hangs in the centre, enormous, inert, cracked near the crown, a scar running down its face like a tear frozen mid-fall. He is already there, the bell ringer. Tall, thin, skin like worn parchment. His coat hangs loose over his frame, the cuffs frayed and spotted with old wax. His hair is grey, his beard silver-threaded and short. He sits near the wall on a three-legged stool, whittling a small block of wood into a shape you can't yet name. "You're late," he says, though there is no reprimand in it. You nod, breath caught from the climb. He gestures toward the coiled ropes neatly stacked and seldom touched. "She hasn't rung in months," he says. "Not properly. Not since." He trails off. You both know the date. The day the guillotine came to the square and didn't leave. He stands, brushes the shavings from his coat, and moves to the rope. "Want to try?" he asks. You hesitate. "Go on. She won't bite." You grip the rope. It is thick, fibrous, worn smooth by centuries of hands. You pull, not hard, not enough to make her sing. Only enough to feel her weight resist you. "She's tired," he says. "Or maybe she's just listening." He walks past the bell, lays a palm against her side. She used to ring for weddings, births, harvests. Now no one listens for her voice. They wait for gunshots, for slogans. You ask him why he still comes. He kneels, begins to oil a gear on the crank, because someone should remember what joy sounded like. He opens a drawer near the wall. Inside are bells of all sizes, handbells, table bells, broken clappers. He picks one, small and brass, and hands it to you. "This one was my grandson's," he says quietly. "He played it after school. Little games. He liked to hide it in my boots." You glance toward the empty stool. "He died at Place de la Nation." Wrong colour ribbon, wrong poem. The silence deepens. He sits beside you. "When they stopped the churches, I thought I'd never come back here. But she," he nods toward the great bell, "she kept waiting, like a mother whose child stopped writing." You ask if he still believes. He thinks for a long while. "I believe in echoes," he says. You sit for a time without speaking. The pigeons flutter overhead. The wind whistles through a cracked shutter. From far below, the cries of vendors rise faintly, dulled by distance. He reaches for the smaller bell again, places it in your palm. "Ring it," he says. You do. The sound is clear, thin, but true. It dances off the stone, lingers longer than you expect. A note that trembles, then fades. He closes his eyes. "She remembers," he said. You help him tidy the chamber, sweep the straw, fold the cloths. When you ask about the wooden figure he was carving, he hands it to you. A bird, wings tucked, eyes closed. "For your window," he says, to remind you to listen. Before you descend, he lights a lantern and climbs a step-ladder. He touches the bell with his palm again, then presses his forehead to her side. Not a prayer, a memory. You leave him there quiet and reverent, alone among ropes and rust and the ghosts of sound. And as you descend the stairwell, your hand trailing the wall, you hear it, not the bell, but silence. A silence so full, it feels like a voice waiting to be born. The prison smells of mildew and iron, a scent that sinks into your coat, your skin, your lungs. The walls are damp to the touch, as though they breathe sorrow, exhaling slowly into the stone. Lanterns flicker along the narrow corridors, casting long shadows on the low ceilings and the chained doors. Beneath your feet, the floor sweats. You are here to read. Not books, not decrees. Letters. Words written by those waiting in silence, penned in trembling hands, and ink made thin with tears or blood. Some on torn linen, some on butcher's paper, some scratched into scraps of bark, each one addressed to someone who may never receive it. The jailer meets you at the gate, a short man with a limp and a ring of keys that sings with each step. He says little, but he knows your name, hands you a bundle, bound in twine. 23 letters today. Read 5, he says, unlocking the room. No more. They can't afford hope. The reading chamber is small, just 4 chairs and a broken bench. A single candle sputters in the wall sconce. You sit at the table, adjust your posture, and open the first. To my wife, Ellie. The writing is soft, almost apologetic. A man writes of the birds he saw from his cell, sparrows, dancing above the courtyard. He tells her he dreams of plum trees, of her hair when it's wet, of bread. You read the letter aloud, though no one is present. The jailer listens from the door. He does not speak. You finish, fold the letter, set it aside. Next, to mother, if you still live. A boy's hand. The words are crooked, cut through with panic. He begs forgiveness for a crime, unnamed. Mentions a dog he left behind. He says he is cold, that the guards call him Little Prince. You pause halfway through. The silence after your voice fades is heavier than before. You reach the 3rd letter. This one is different. The writing is graceful, practiced, each line deliberate. The ink dark and full. My dearest daughter. It begins with memories. The sound of her laughter at the riverbank. The way she hid her muddy shoes beneath the stairs. The author writes of dreams, of warm bread, of wool blankets, of rain on tiled roofs. He says nothing of guilt, nothing of fear, only longing. I hope you will remember me as a man who once held your hand through storms. You stop. You read that sentence again, slower this time. The jailer clears his throat but says nothing. You finish the letter. Your voice wavers at the final line. And if you cannot remember me with love, then at least remember that I remembered you. You fold the letter with care, tie it again with string, place it in the box marked Return to Archive. The 4th letter is shorter, just a note, scribbled in haste. They are coming. I hear their boots. I am not afraid. I just wish someone would say my name. No signature. You whisper it aloud, though you do not know what name to give. The jailer speaks at last. That one came from the women's wing. She died before the morning count. You nod. One more. The 5th letter is addressed to the river. You read, puzzled at first. Then you understand. The prisoner writes, not to a person but to the water that passes near his cell. He describes its sound, its smell, its shimmer in moonlight. He imagines casting a bottle into it, watching it drift towards someone who might read his truth. He ends with a question. Do you ever remember what you carry, river? Do you remember the hands that reach for you? You close the letter. The candle flickers low. The jailer locks the box. You stand, your legs stiff, your voice still echoing in the stones. As you leave, he hands you a new bundle. Tomorrow, he says, if they still write. You walk home in silence, and that night, you write no letter. But you dream of warm bread, of a child's laughter on the riverbank, of a name spoken softly, even if only once. The alley narrows as you walk, pressed in by leaning walls and shutters that no longer open. Snow has begun to fall, not in flurries, but in quiet, solitary flakes, each one melting the moment it touches the ground. The air tastes of smoke and iron. You wrap your scarf tighter, your fingers already numb. At the far end of the passage, beneath a crooked lintel painted with faded roses, she waits. The widow. She wears black, but not the kind worn by churchgoers or noble mourners. Her dress is layered, frayed at the hem, pinned in places where the fabric has given up. Her boots are mismatched, her gloves fingerless, and in her eyes, you see the kind of grief that has had time to dry, to settle into bone. Laid out before her, on a blanket spread over the cobblestones, are small bundles of wrapped cloth and folded parchment. Charcoal, she tells passers-by, mourning coal, for memory, for luck. You approach. She gestures to a small tin brazier at her side, its embers barely glowing. Come close, she says. It's honest heat. You kneel beside her, and she lifts one of the cloth bundles. Inside is a lump of coal, irregular, smooth on one side. It smells faintly of pine and something sweeter. They burned martyrs with this, she says. Wood from the convent wall. Books from the Jesuit school, bones from the garden of the September dead. It all went to ash, and ash makes coal. You don't know whether to believe her. She speaks with certainty but not arrogance. You ask if people truly buy it. She nods. Some for altars, some to crush into paint. A few carry it in their pockets. Say it protects them. She points to a man in a tricorn hat shuffling past. He buried his brother with one in his hand. Swore he wouldn't be forgotten. She opens another bundle. This one is different. Wrapped in blue linen, with a strand of hair tied to the knot. This one's special, she murmurs. Came from a poet's hearth. He read his last verse into the fire. She looks at you, searching. You got someone? You hesitate. Then you say a name. One you haven't spoken in months. She nods once. Solemn. She pulls from her bag a smaller piece, almost polished from handling. She wraps it in red cloth, ties it with string, and presses it into your hand. No charge, she says. But tell it a story tonight. Cole listens. You want to ask more, where she gathers these, how she knows which ember belonged to whom. But she's already turned away, calling to another passerby. Warmth for memory. Ashes for love lost. The wind picks up. Snow thickens. Sometimes I think he's still writing. Somewhere in the smoke. You watch her tie it into a cloth. Place it gently in the sack. Night is falling. You walk her to her doorway, a lean-to behind the tannery, barely more than a roof and a stove. She offers you tea made from ash root and boiled pine needles. You decline. She laughs. No one does. But I still offer. It's the gesture that keeps me alive. Before you leave, she presses a coal into your palm again. Keep it close, she says. When you forget what's been lost, hold it. Remember the warmth. You pocket it. Walk into the snow. And later, in your garret, you place it beside your cot. A black stone. Still warm. Still listening. The shop is tucked between two shuttered wine merchants. Its door so narrow you nearly miss it. There is no sign above the lintel, only a carved gear etched into the wood, faded to a ghost by rain and sun. You push the door open with care, and it groans like a slow breath. Inside, the world is ticking. Not loudly, no single sound commands the air, but together, the clocks create a rhythm like rain on rooftops, like 100 hearts beating in quiet accord. Tall clocks, pocket watches, gilded timepieces on cracked velvet pillows. Some swing, some stand still, some tick forward, others have given up entirely. He stands behind the counter, hunched over a mechanism the size of an apple. The clockmaker. His beard is white, finely trimmed. A loop of magnifying glass hangs around his neck. He looks up as you enter, blinks once, then gestures toward a stool near the hearth. You sit. The room smells of brass polish and lamp oil, of smoke and dusted leather. A pot of coffee warms above a coal tray. The floor creaks under your shifting weight. I don't repair them anymore, he says, voice low. Each word carefully measured, not since the king's clock stopped. You glance around. Hundreds of clocks, but not one shows the same time. He sees your gaze. I let them drift, he explains. Let them wander through their own hours. Some move backwards, some skip days. Like her. He pours 2 cups of coffee. It is thick, bitter. You drink anyway. He lifts a watch from the counter, small, silver-cased, worn smooth. This belonged to my brother, he says. Carried it into the storming of the Bastille. It cracked when the gate fell. I never fixed it. He opens the casing. Inside, a tiny piece of parchment. A child's drawing, faded. 2 stick figures holding hands beneath the sun. He said it was his compass, the old man murmurs. Not for direction, for memory. He replaces it gently. You ask if people still bring him clocks. Sometimes, he says. They come thinking time can be mended. I show them the shelves. Let them listen. He sets another timepiece on the counter. A carriage clock, ornate and gold, its hands stuck at 2:17. This one, he says, belonged to a noble woman. Hid it in her skirts when they took her to the scaffold. Her daughter brought it to me. Said it ticked until the blade fell. You watch him run a cloth over its surface. She wanted it silenced. Said it was too loud. He stops polishing. So I did. He leans back, hands folded in his lap. After the executions began, I stopped winding them. Felt wrong. Time was no longer moving forward, just circling the drain. A wall clock begins to chime. Not the hour. Something in between. Half past something forgotten. The note is soft, resonant, and vanishes before it can be held. He doesn't look up. That one rings for my wife, he says. Always at dusk. She used to light the lamps when it chimed. You ask where she is now. He gestures to a shelf. A small porcelain urn sits beside a rusted key. Gone, he says. But her minutes are still here. You glance at your own hands. The lines in your palms. The dirt beneath your nails. You feel somehow older. The clockmaker sets a small box before you. For you, he says. A gift. You open it. Inside, a watch. Wooden cased, simple. The face is blank. No numbers, no hand. It doesn't tell time, he says. It just holds it. You ask how. He smiles faintly. Every moment you don't look at it is yours. You close the lid. He walks you to the door. Outside, the afternoon is slipping toward dusk. He lifts one last clock from a shelf near the window, a sundial carved from ivory. This one only works when the sun remembers to shine, he says. You step into the street, and as the door shuts behind you, the ticking fades. But not entirely. You carry the silence of clocks with you, the pause between one breath and the next, the stillness where memory waits. The rain begins with no warning. Not a drizzle or a slow build, just a sudden sharp crack as the heavens open, and Paris exhales all at once. The gutters, already lined with filth and fallen paper, overflow within minutes. You are caught mid-step, ankle deep before you realize it, your coat growing heavier with every breath the sky releases. You press yourself into a doorway on Rue Saint-Honoré, along with others, strangers drawn together by water and the need to remain standing. A man beside you mutters curses in 3 languages. A woman wrings her sleeves with a resigned sigh. A dog shivers between a pair of boots. None of you speak beyond that. Across the street, the storm has pulled down a flag from its post. It lies in a puddle, the tricolour drowned in its own reflection. Raindrops turn the white stripe pink. You watch as a young woman steps into the flood, bareheaded, arms lifted slightly, as if the water might part around her. It does not. She walks with purpose, feet dragging through the rushing gutter, eyes scanning the road ahead. Something catches her attention. She stops, bends, picks something up from the edge of a drain. A child's shoe, small, worn, mud-caked, the leather split along the side. She holds it for a moment, staring, then tucks it into her coat and continues walking. Slower now. You step out from the shelter and follow. The rain soaks you instantly, curling into your ears, slipping down your collar, running in rivulets along your spine. The street ahead is emptying. Most have run for cover. The stalls are abandoned. Bread floats in a broken basket near the curb. You catch up to her near a collapsed market cart. She doesn't look at you, but speaks aloud, voice barely louder than the rain. He couldn't have gotten far. He was limping. You ask if she's looking for someone. My brother, she replies. 10 years old. Gone since yesterday. Said he wanted to find mother. You ask if she means the one who... Yes? She doesn't explain further. She walks on. You follow. Every few steps she stops and examines the ground. She kneels once, lifts a scarf from a puddle, shakes it out, and frowns. Not his. You offer to help. She doesn't respond, but doesn't say no. Together you comb the alleyways that fork off Rue Saint-Honoré. In each, water runs like blood from a wound, quick and dark, and never backward. The buildings weep from their gutters. Laundry swings forgotten on broken lines. She pauses before a collapsed doorway and whispers a name. Etienne. There is no answer. She kneels in the mud, the child's shoe in her lap. She strokes it with her thumb, slow and gentle. He always tied them too loose, she says. We couldn't afford new laces. You stand beside her in silence. The rain is softer now. She looks up at you. I know he's gone, but I still look. You understand. You kneel too. Together you wrap the shoe in cloth and place it beside a candle stub on the threshold. A small altar for someone who may still be alive, or may not. It doesn't matter. The gesture is what survives. You rise and begin walking again. As you pass beneath the arch at the end of the street, a drain unclogs with a gurgle and releases a rush of brown water into the road. A small doll floats past your feet, eyeless, one arm missing. You catch it, brush it clean, hand it to her. Not his, she says. But she holds it anyway. You part at the corner. She walks east, toward the quarter where children disappear and reappear without reason. You head west, toward home, your coat dripping, your bones chilled, your thoughts slow. Later that night, you unwrap the bread from your pocket. It is damp, beginning to mold, but still, you chew it slowly, and you place a single candle on your windowsill. For all the names not spoken, for all the shoes not claimed, for all the rain that carries them into forgetting. The scent hits you first, unexpected, unlooked for, and so rich it stops you in the middle of the street. Yeast, fire, crust, warmth. Not the usual burnt flour or char of bark extended dough, but something real, something full. You follow it, heart quickening despite yourself, breath catching as if you've just remembered what hunger truly means. The bakery stands where it always has, tucked beneath a crooked eave on Rue de l'Arbre Sec, its shutters warped and patched, its door frame leaning like a tired shoulder. For months it has stood cold, boarded, burnt once, and abandoned. But today, the light inside is golden. The queue is short, no shouts, no guards, just neighbors. The old man who sells feathers, the girl with the birthmark on her cheek, the widow who once screamed herself hoarse in the square. They stand in silence, wrapped in scarves, watching steam rise from the chimney, as though from a miracle. You take your place behind them. Inside, she moves like a wraith, through the glow. The bread taster. You know her at once, though the lines on her face have deepened, and the weight on her frame has settled into a kind of stillness. She does not test the bread anymore. She bakes it. The oven behind her roars gently, steady as a heartbeat. Loaves line the shelf, modest, no flourishes, but shaped with care. A few are round, a few long, all golden with just the right hint of char at the edges. She works alone. No apprentice, no guard, no taste tester. When you reach the counter, she looks at you without surprise. I remember you, she says, from the days of Ash. You smile. So you still have your tongue, she adds. Good. She reaches for a loaf, wraps it in cloth, and hands it over. It is warm, solid. It smells like time finally passed. I grind my own grain now, she explains. Barter with the farmers south of Charenton. They don't ask many questions. You ask if she's still afraid. She wipes flour from her fingers. Always, she says. But the fear has softened. Like dough after the first rise. You break the loaf as you leave, unable to wait. The crust sings beneath your fingers. The steam escapes in curls, and when you bite into it, you forget the taste of your own name. You carry the rest home under your coat, as if guarding a newborn. Along the way, others stop you to ask where you found it. You gesture, their eyes widen. Some begin to run. Later, you return. Not for more, but to see. She lets you behind the counter, points to the bench near the oven. You watch her shape the dough, fingers pressing and folding, coaxing life from flour and salt. She doesn't speak much. You don't ask much. The fire hums. The room is warm. I thought I'd never bake again, she says quietly. After the trials, after the poisonings, I thought taste itself had turned traitor. You nod. But this, she continues, lifting a round loaf from the peel. This is resistance. Quiet, crumb by crumb. She cuts you a slice. You chew slowly. It is not just bread, it is breath made solid. Memory you can hold in your mouth. You help her scrub the boards, gather the baskets, sweep the flour from the cracks. At dusk, she closes the shutters herself. The bread that's left is given to a boy with no shoes. No money is exchanged. As you step into the street, the scent clings to your coat. People pass you and pause, their eyes lighting as the smell reaches them. They turn, heads lifted like deer catching wind of water. That night, in your garret, you eat the last slice by candlelight. And for the first time in many weeks, you do not dream of ashes or knives or missing shoes. You dream of crust, of fire, of bread. Again, at last. The garden was once a grave. You would never know it now. Not from the way the sunlight dangles through the leaves, or how the breeze threads through the tall grass like fingers through a sleeping child's hair. The scent here is green, alive, but you know the truth. Beneath the roots and soil, beneath the violets and thyme, lie bones. Hundreds, maybe more. You enter through the old cloister gate. It creaks softly, not from disuse, but from age. The hinges have forgotten their youth, but they still remember how to open. A woman in brown is kneeling beside a patch of soil near the wall, her hands wrist-deep in earth. You approach quietly. She looks up and smiles. Her face is lined, sun-kissed, eyes the color of dust after rain. "You're early," she says. "That's good. The saplings came this morning." You help her unload the bundles. Small trees wrapped in burlap, their roots curled like sleeping creatures. Chestnut, linden, hazel, all modest, all chosen for their gentleness. "This ground has had enough violence," she says. "We plant what softens." She gestures to the rows already planted. Young trees with wooden tags dangling from twine. Each one bears a name, written by hand. Some with full dates, some with just initials, others only a first name. You kneel beside her. She hands you a sapling and a tag. "Clemence." You pause. "I knew her," you say. She nods. "So did I." You dig slowly, hands trembling. The soil is warm, loose, surprisingly forgiving. As you press the roots into the earth, you feel something shift, not beneath your hands, but inside your chest, a loosening. You tie the name tag gently. "She was kind," you whisper. "She mended clothes for strangers." The woman beside you places a hand on your shoulder. She remembered birthdays no one else did. You look around, dozens of trees, each one whispering as the wind passes through their budding leaves. A forest of memory, still small, but reaching. Some of the name tags flutter. Others are still. One reads simply, "Mon amour," another, "To the one who sang." You ask how it started. "After the bodies were removed," she explains, "there was nothing left but silence. So I began planting, one tree, then two. People brought names, stories, a brother, a midwife, a baker's son." She pulls a folded scrap of paper from her apron. "This one's for a girl named Sabine. No one knows her last name, but someone remembered the way she laughed when it rained." You help her dig another hole. The shovel strikes something hard. You pause. She kneels, brushes aside the dirt. A tooth, human, whole. She exhales, wraps it in cloth, and sets it beside the roots. "She can stay," she says. You finish planting in silence. As dusk falls, she lights 3 lanterns and hangs them from branches. "Not everyone has someone to grieve them," she says. "But here even the forgotten grow leaves." You sit together on the low wall that borders the garden. In the distance, the city murmurs. A dog barks, a market bell rings, but here there is only wind and roots, and the soft rustle of names remembering themselves. She hands you a tag and a pencil. "Write one," she says. "Even if you're not sure they're gone." You hesitate. Then you write. You tie the tag to a tree, not yet blooming. A promise, not a memory. As you rise to leave, she places a sapling in your hands. "For the street behind the tannery," she says. "There's still room." You carry it home like a child. And when you plant it, days later, the rain falls soft. Not a morning rain, but the kind that makes things grow. It tolls just once. A low, fractured sound. Not a chime, not a call, but something more ancient, like stone remembering its shape. The bell above Notre Dame hasn't rung since the old days. Not truly. Its tongue had been stilled by fear, by edict, by dust, thick enough to muffle time, and yet, this morning it speaks. You are there when it happens. You stand at the edge of the square, hands in your coat, breath misting. Around you, a gathering, small, uncertain, a baker with flour on her sleeves, a boy holding his father's hand, a soldier without a saber. No one speaks. The silence before the toll has texture, raw, heavy. Then the sound breaks it. The bell sings. If one could call it that. A single note with a splintered edge. It does not rise cleanly. It groans, catches, limps through the air like a wounded thing. But it flies. It finds ears. It lands in hearts like a returning bird. You close your eyes. For a moment you are not in this square. You are 10 again, and your mother is lighting the stove with last year's olive branches. You are 12, and someone is pouring broth into your chipped bowl. You are 15, and you are running, not from something, but toward it. The bell tolls again, this time stronger. From the bell tower, the old ringer leans out, hair wild in the wind. arms working the rope, like a man casting spells. He rings not with precision, but with memory. He pulls and lets go, pulls and lets go. His hands are blistered, his spine curved, but the bell obeys him still. Around you people begin to cry, not loudly, not the wailing of grief, but the soft, private tears of someone who didn't expect to feel anything at all. You see her, the woman from the bakery, the taster of poison. She holds a roll, half-wrapped, untouched. Her eyes are wet. She does not wipe them. Next to her stands Luke, the boy who swept ashes from the cathedral floors. He watches the sky, lips parted, as if hearing words the rest cannot. His pocket bulges with something, perhaps another tooth, or maybe a crumb of something sacred. A man beside you mutters, "They said she would never ring again." And someone answers, "She wasn't waiting for permission." You take a step forward. Your feet remember this square, once muddy with blood, now washed clean by too many rains. The guillotine is gone, only the stones remain, but beneath them, you know what lies there. The bell tolls a third time, and with it, a flock of pigeons lifts from the tower roof. A sudden eruption of grey and white into the sky. The sound is changing. It doesn't crack anymore. It deepens, rounds itself. With each toll, it grows more certain, more whole, as if the bell were finding its own voice again, after too long swallowed. Children laugh, not because they understand, but because the sound makes them feel taller. A woman begins to hum beneath her breath, a lullaby you last heard in a wet nurse's cottage. You tilt your head back, the clouds part, just slightly. The sun touches the tower like a blessing. The bell tolls again, not for war, not for judgment, but for return, not of king, not of power, but of the quiet, that old, slow rhythm of life that has nothing to do with decrees or flags or orders. The sound of a morning that belongs to itself. The last toll is the lowest. It sinks into the stone, into your shoes, into the marrow of the city. It fades, but does not vanish. It lingers. It waits. As the crowd begins to drift apart, no one speaks. They simply walk, together, apart. Home. You remain. You look up once more, and though the bell is still now, its voice folded into silence, something inside you has begun to ring softly, steadily, and you are not sure it will ever stop. The sun rises without fanfare. No trumpets, no hymns, no shouting of news from the corners. Just light, low and gold, stretching itself across slate rooftops, brushing frost from the shutters, sliding gently over cobblestones still damp from the night. You walk slowly, boots worn smooth, scarf tied tight, hands tucked in pockets rubbed soft by years of use. The street is familiar. Rue de la Lanterne, a place you once avoided, a place you once bled for. You pause at the alley's mouth, the one that bends just slightly to the left before straightening, where the gutters used to overflow, and the stench would curl beneath your tongue, and live there for days. You know it by heart. You step in. There is no filth, no rot, no buckets waiting to be emptied, no stains that never lifted. The stones are clean, not polished, not shining, just clean. As if the rain had learned tenderness, as if hands had remembered what it meant to make something livable again. You walk its length. Your shadow follows quietly, slipping across the faces of buildings that now hold flower pots and unbroken windows. You pass the door where the seamstress once lived, the one who stitched for the dead and the condemned. Her window is open. A red ribbon flutters from the sill. You stop outside the bakery. She is gone now. Not buried, but moved. South, perhaps, or west. A neighbour says she took her oven and her silence and left when the weather warmed. But someone else bakes there now. You can smell it. The crust, the sugar, no poison tester needed. Children play in the square. One of them skips past you, dragging a wooden cart. Inside it sits a cloth doll, with one eye, arms stuffed with straw. The child shouts something joyful. You don't understand the words, but you understand the sound. You continue on. You turn down the passage where the leechman once disappeared into mist. It's overgrown now, lined with ivy and moss. No jars, no humming, just the quiet dripping of a gutter into a basin. At the end of the lane, someone has planted a tree. It's young, chestnut, by the shape of the leaves, but sturdy. Beneath it lies a small wooden plaque. The name has faded, but someone cared enough to carve it once. You rest a hand on the bark. It is cold, but alive. You cross the Seine by the old footbridge. Below, the water runs smooth, grey-green and slow. A boat passes, trailing wake. A boy stands at the rail, tossing crumbs to birds that do not fear hands anymore. When you reach the other side, you hear it. The faintest tick. You look down. A small watchmaker's stall, propped open like a music box. Inside, clocks swing in time, each one set to a different hour. You recognize the man behind the counter, older now, but his hands still careful. He sees you, nods once, then returns to winding. You smile. You make your way back to the alley. Rue de la Lanterne is quiet again. You pause at its mouth, take in the stillness. No banners, no soldiers, no gallows, no blood. Only the sound of a broom sweeping. A voice calling for a cat. The soft clink of a pot hung to boil. You step forward. Then, stop. You kneel. You run your fingers over the stones. Cold, smooth, unbroken. They do not protest. They no longer stink. They do not remember your old boots, or your buckets, or the stain you scrubbed every morning before hope had time to wait. But you remember, and for once the memory does not hurt. You rise. You walk on. And behind you, the cleanest street in Paris does not shout or weep or sing. It simply endures. Like you, like all things that were never supposed to survive, but did. As the last bell fades and the streets return to silence, thank you for walking this long road with me. If this story lingered in your heart, I invite you to return again. There are more quiet corners of history waiting to be remembered. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and let's keep memory alive, one step, one story, one breath at a time. Which part of this journey stayed with you most? Whose voice still echoes in your memory? As the last echoes fade from this journey, I thank you for walking the forgotten alleys with me. These were the hands that scrubbed, stitched and suffered, and yet still shaped a world. If the silence soothed you or the sorrow stirred you, subscribe and return anytime. There are more quiet corners of history waiting. Could you have endured a job like these, in a time like that? What chapter's story lingered with you the most? Would you have chosen silence or survival?